Hello Game Makers, this is GameMaker Rob, and today we are going to be covering a day-night cycle system for a shader, as well as having arrays for NPCs so you can move them around depending on the time of day that it is, and also create and destroy them. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so before we get started, I'm just going to show you what a shader is very briefly. So if you make a new shader, then it should have two tabs. This first tab is for matrices. I believe it's for drawing, shading, 3D, that kind of thing. And the second tab is what everyone seems to use for 2D, and it should look like this. And we're only going to make a small change to it. All this does right now is it grabs all the colours on the screen and it runs them through this function, and it just returns the same colours because we're not changing it. It's also worth noting that you can't change a variable inside a shader. It has to be passed a variable from outside, and we're going to be doing that by using uniforms. You're not going to know what they are. I don't really understand them myself. I just know that if you want to change a colour, you have to grab the uniform and then pass a variable to that uniform. So if you call your shader sh day night like this, and then in the second tab we're going to have 4 new variables. They're all going to be uniform floats. A float is like a number that has decimal places. Shaders don't work well with integers. So we're going to have red, green, blue and alpha, and we're going to create a new variable called color change, and it's going to be a vec4. So a vector 4 has 4 variables. They're always red, green, blue, alpha, which is why I've named them like that, just to make it easy to read. And all we're going to do with color change is we're going to times the original colors by color change, and that is what is going to give us our coloring effect. Okay, so now we have our basic shader. We're going to make an object called obj day night, like this one here, and make it persistent. So make sure this is checked. And then in the create event, this is where we are going to grab the uniforms, like I was saying. So we need to get the uniform for red, green, blue, and alpha. Although this one isn't really necessary because we don't use it, but if you wanted to manipulate the alpha, then you can do that as well. And we're also going to have an array. This array is going to store the colors. It's going to store the changes to the colors as well, and we're going to pass that back through to the shader. So this needs to be done in the create event, and then in a step event. For now, we're just going to have like an example of the colors changing randomly, just to show you how it works. So we're going to have a quick for loop. It's going to run from red to blue, so I is less than or equal to 2. And we're going to add a number between minus 0.1 and 0.1 to get a gradual color change. And we're going to make sure we don't have a color number between that's less than 0 and more than 2. And it's only going to run if we're on the world map and the player isn't in battle. I did delete the battle object from the world, so I don't have to worry about battling. Then in the draw event, so again we're checking if we're on the world map. You have to set the shader to use it, and whenever you set the shader you have to reset it as well, so make sure you have that. The game's not going to run if you don't have this line. It's going to give you an error message, so you can't really make a mistake with that. This is where we are going to pass the variable to the shader. So we're setting the uniform that we grabbed in the create event and setting it to one of the variables from our array. So red, green, blue, alpha. And then this is how we're going to actually change the colors. So we're using this object to draw the tile layers. These 3 are pretty self-explanatory. We're drawing basic, collision and decoration. We're not going to be doing overhead just now. I'll cover that later on this episode, but we're just going to be doing these 3 layers for now, and I can't find a way to grab the tile or change the background, so I'm using a function called draw sprite tiled, and we're going to be using a global later on, but for now we're just going to use the sprite that we use for the background, just so we can manipulate it through the shader. And we want to place this object for now in the battle region, just so it gets drawn over everything else. This is going to draw over our player 2 for now. One thing I need to do as well is in my draw GUI, just get rid of this stuff. And in the draw GUI of the day-night object, I just have a little for loop just to show the different numbers for the colors. So if we run a game, we should have a nice random shading effect in the world map, like this. So you should have something similar to this now. You can see the numbers changing in the top left. Okay, cool. Okay, so I've deleted the day-night object from the world map, and I've added a new layer to all of the rooms called INS day-night, and this is the layer for the shader. It's going to be below the player but above all the layers that it's going to draw. This means that we don't need to actually show these layers anymore. You can hide them like that and they'll still get drawn. It doesn't seem to make a difference whether you do this or not, but if you have performance problems, then that could be something to check. Also, I've added all of these layers into the starting room RM init, because we're going to create the shader object at the very start of the game. Inside obj init, we're going to have a new region at the very bottom called day-night, and we're going to have a new global. So this is going to be used for the background layer, so we know what tile to draw, and it's going to be set inside every room, every village, every world map. Time of day enumerator, so we've only got 4. We've got dawn, daytime, sunset and nighttime, and there's an array entry for every time of day, and the stats for each entry is going to have a red value, a green value, a blue value, and how long the time of day is going to last for. So for example, if we look at dawn, red value is going to be 2, green and blue are going to be 1, and it's going to last for 3 times room speed, so like 90 steps or so. These values are something you can mess around with to get your desired colour. Just have a play with them until you get what looks good with your own game, because it's probably going to look different with different sprites. But this is what I settled with after messing around for a while. That's something I was happy with. And the last global we're going to add is going to be current time of day, and this is going to track which actual time of day we're on. And this is where we're going to create the day-night object on the layer. This name here has to match this, otherwise it's not going to work. And we also have some changes inside. One more thing to do actually. Search for global .room type. So we need to change the initial room type to something like dungeon, otherwise we're going to get a background drawn on our initial room. If you want to have that, you can do, but I just want a black background in my room for now, so that's why I'm doing that. And now we need to update the day-night object. So in the create event, we're going to have a timer called time of day timer. So in the step event, most of it's changed. So I'm only gonna have the cycle run if we are on the world map. The reason for this is we're gonna have NPCs that move around, or start in different places depending on time of day, and they might not even be there at all. So rather than have to code them walking around and moving from position to position and that kind of thing. We're just going to jump to whatever time of day it should be without the color transition. So this, and we're not going to have the time of day changing inside villages either. So that's why we have this statement there. So we're going to run the timer. This is going to track how long the time of day lasts for, and when it gets to the room speed times 3, it's going to change the time of day. And because the colors aren't going to be the colors that we want, we're going to run this code here. So we're going to get the actual value, the current value of red, green and blue from the array, and then the color that we want for each color from our new global array. So for example, blue for nighttime is 2, so this would return 2 for blue. And if the current value does not equal the value that we want, then we are going to slowly increase the current value, which is what this is going to do until we get to the value that we want. Say for example, blue is currently 1, this, and we want 2. 2 minus 1 would be 1, and the sign of that would be 1, and then we divide that by 100, which gives us 0.01. And that's what we're going to add to blue every step until we get to 2, and then it's going to stop. If this timer is greater than or equal to the time of day, then we're going to increase our global current time of day by 1. If we are already at night time, then we want to skip back to dawn, which is what this is going to do. It might be more understandable if we just do this and then reset the timer. Otherwise, if we are not on the world map and the player is not disabled, if we're in a village, automatically change the shader to the proper colors, which is what this does. We've only changed a few things in the draw event this time. We're checking if we're on the world map or in a village. Background, we are using our new global to draw the background. And draw GUI, nothing's changed there. One thing I haven't done yet is inside our own world creation code, I'm going to say the background tile is SPR water world. Just going to copy this, and then in the village creation code, background tile equals SPR grass. There we go. So if we run the game, I think I've covered everything for now. We're going to see a proper day-night cycle. So it's dawn in the village, and time is not going to progress. So if we go to the world map and just stand around, you can see the red is decreasing to daytime. Now it's increasing to sunset, and now the blue is going to go up to 2 for nighttime. Red and green are going to be 0.5. And that's the transition. So you can mess around with the values as much as you want. I'm probably going to make a separate tutorial just about the shader with a little for loop, so you can change the values at will. But for now, you can just change them in the create event if you want. And the last change we are going to make with the shader is we need something to do the tiles, draw the tiles overhead. So in the create event of day-night, we're going to have these 2 lines. We're going to make a shader called, an object called obj underscore day underscore night underscore overhead. And we're just going to put it on the battle layer because it's we can just use that to draw over the player and over the overhead tiles, which is exactly what we want. and we're going to set a variable inside our new object called owner, and owner is going to store the ID of our main day-night object. The reason for this, it's not strictly necessary, it's just so we can access the instance variables, but like I said, it's not really strictly necessary because we should only really be having one instance of obj day-night anyway. And in the object itself, the new one, we only have a draw event, and it's very similar to the one from obj day-night. The only difference is we are grabbing owner.p0 and owner.acol because we want to get the parent, the owner variables, and we are just drawing the overhead layer inside it. So now if we run the game, and now the statue, this head bit is in the overhead layer area, and you can see it's now shaded by the sunset or dawn, sorry, and we can walk underneath it and everything works as it should do, as well as the doorways, that kind of thing. Okay, so now we are actually going to have an NPC that only appears at certain times of day. It's going to be a door, but the array that we use can be used for anything from a villager to a story guy, and it shouldn't be too hard to adapt that to days of the week, that kind of thing, but I'm not going to go that far with this tutorial because I think that's probably a bit too specific for a starter kit. So the first thing I'm going to show you is I've added a sprite to SPR NPC furniture. It's just the door sprite, and the same for SPR NPC furniture searched, another door sprite. And inside obj init, let me just delete this one, in the create event, so we've got a new region called time of day for NPCs. This is going to basically dictate whether the NPC is going to be around at certain times of day or not. So that is active. If he's not active, he's not going to be in the room at all, because we're going to delete him. Start X and start Y. This is so you can move them around to different places, and walks around, whether they walk around or not, basically. And we've added door to the eNPC furniture enumerator, and we've added an entry for the door as well. It's going to have no gold, no item, and not searched. And that's all you should need in the create event for the init object. The last thing we need to do, in the player object, step event. So we're inside the talking region, and we're inside region furniture, and if you click on where it says if the item held is greater than or equal to 0, click there where the curly bracket is, and there's the partner, and we're going to add this code here. So if it's got an item greater than or equal to 0, otherwise the item is going to be -1, and then we're going to say if it's a door, we're just going to change the text to the door is locked. So we're just going to get that message every time we try and click on the door. And last of all, we're going to make the NPC inside the village. So here's the door NPC, and we've got the furniture ID of 2 to set him as a door. NPC ID and NPC type are both furniture. This is an array you can copy and paste in any NPC that you want to have moving around or only be available at certain times of day. For dawn, daytime and sunset, he's not going to be active. He's going to be in the same place, but it doesn't matter because he's going to be destroyed anyway, and he's not going to be walking around. But when it gets to nighttime, he is going to be active, and he's starting X and Y. And this code here is what's going to change the NPC based on time of day. So if he's not active, then he's going to be destroyed. Otherwise, his X and Y are going to be the start X and start Y, depending on the current time of day. And then walks around is also going to be based on the current time of day for this entry here. So once you have that, we can actually test this. Let's run the game. So when we first start, it's going to be dawn, and we should not see the door. So we just go up and check. He's not there. We can walk through it, no problem. And if we go outside, we're going to wait until it's nighttime. And we'll go back in, and there should be a door. So now it's nighttime. We're going to try and buy something or sell something, but we can't because there's a door in the way. We press space, it says the door is locked. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I learned something myself by actually making the shader. So thank you for the great suggestion, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.